Hello everybody and welcome to another decent Orianna video. Today we're going to be talking about attitude in League of Legends and why it matters. So the inspiration for this video comes from my recent experiences in Ranked. After reaching Master Tier, my MR put me into borderline Grandmasters games. We're talking 250 LP plus games. And all of a sudden everything got really difficult, really fast. Unfortunately, not long after realizing I had a lot to learn, I went on a fairly severe losing streak, dropping all the way to Diamond 2. It took quite a lot of self-reflection and focus, but I have now managed to climb my way back into Master Tier, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to reflect on my experience and climbing as a whole. I'm going to use the last game at Masters Pro as the background. It was an absolutely shocking game for me. Most people would be embarrassed to even associate themselves with it, especially since the video is talking about climbing in soloQ. But I thought this game really summarizes what climbing actually looks like. Some games you carry, some games you get carried. There are games where you just have to acknowledge you're much worse than the enemy and find a way to turn it around with your team. So what is attitude? Well, attitude within League of Legends is the way you react and act in certain situations, usually in regards to mistakes either made by yourself or your teammates. You could say it is the lens through which you view the game. If your perception of your own and your team's mistakes is distorted, you'll find it harder to focus on the things that matter, i.e. not dying, getting kills, and ultimately winning. So why does attitude matter? Well, it contributes to every other aspect of the game. You can improve your mechanics and climb, say, 1 or 2 divisions. Then you can move on to your farming and move up another 1 or 2 divisions. However, if during all of this your attitude is not correct and you find yourself flaming teammates, you're actually not giving yourself the chance to fully fix any other issues. How can you know that your farming is an issue if you give up every game and FF before the game reaches 30 minutes? In such a case, there is no way to find out if you know how to farm after 30 minutes, even if your farming is perfect in laning phase. The beautiful thing about attitude is that it reflects directly onto all other aspects of your game. If you focus on yourself and improving your attitude, everything else will get better too. The farming that we were talking about earlier, well, if you fix your attitude and decide not to give up, not flame your teammates and focus on your own mistakes, you'll automatically notice when you're missing farm due to unforced errors, bad positioning or bad wave management. You can't really do that if you're flaming a jungler for dying to a jungle camp. You're far too focused on their mistake to notice your own. So how can you fix your attitude? It's simple to say to somebody, just focus on yourself, don't flame your teammates, or go out there and improve. But it doesn't really mean anything if you don't have the tools to really give it a try. Well, the thing you must understand is that you only have, hypothetically, control over about 15 to 25% of the game. The players who don't climb get angry over the other 75 to 85% that they can't actually control. We're talking AFKs, rage quitters, people first timing champs. The people who climb instead try and maximize their percentage and squeeze out every last decimal point. So what do I actually recommend doing to climb? Well, the first thing I would do is find your own mistakes in what other people do. Let's use our earlier example. Say your jungler does die to Wraiths early on. At first, not really your fault, but if you really question yourself, you'll find that there is always something you could have done to avoid that situation. Maybe you could have given them a better leash, so they were more healthy to start with. Or perhaps you walked past them as they were doing the camp. You could have used an ability and an auto attack to help them out. There is even the option to give them 1 ping just to warn them, if you were certain that they would die to the camp. If you were playing mid lane and your lane was in a decent state, you should have spotted them being low and went over to help them. It's such a small detail, but if your jungler was taking those Wraiths to hit level 3, that could be the difference between going back with level 3, buying items and then snowballing other lanes to win the game, or just dying and getting nothing out of it. Maybe because you didn't save your jungler, they now have to go fight over Scuttle to try and hit level 3. They die to the enemy jungler, and the game is over from there. It's such a small interaction, but these sorts of things make or break games. If your attitude wasn't right, you'd flame a jungler and tell all of your friends that the noob jungler lost your gold promos. But in that scenario, I would argue with you that it's yourself that lost your gold promos. Let's use one more example. Your Mordekaiser top solo dies to the enemy Fiora level 1 before the minions even spawn, and then proceeds to die 15 times. Surely not your mistake, right? He's just trolling you, probably PayPal'd by the enemy team to ruin your promo into Bronze 3. Well, once again I'd have to argue with that. Analyze the situation and see what you could have done. Maybe your Mordekaiser was first timing the champ since he lost his last 15 games and was super tilted. In that case, I would probably just dodge the game, take the 3 LP penalty. But I'm in my promos, I can't dodge. Yeah, it happens sometimes. If you're stuck with such a person, you just have to make do with what you can control. If you see the Mordek standing in the enemy bush out of position 1 minute in, try and ping him off. Tell him the Führer will be him level 1. If he doesn't listen and you suspect the Führer is coming, walk over to him. Suddenly your Mordek inting level 1 could just be turned into first blood for you. A single decision with 2 completely opposite outcomes. Maybe even ask your jungler to tag along. Do a late invade, completely throw off the enemy team. If you know the guy is having a rough game, cheer him on. You don't know what's going on in his life that day. Maybe he just got fired from his job and wanted to play a peaceful game of League of Legends. It might be the case that all he needs to hear is a few kind words telling him that everyone has bad games, and suddenly he'll want to play and try his hardest. There are so many different things that you could have done in that situation. As I mentioned earlier, the same logic applies to AFKs, rage quitters, and so forth. You should never get angry over things you can't control. It's a statistical certainty that if you play enough games, you'll get these sort of things happen to you. And stats don't care if you're in a promo or not. To take this thought even further, out of the millions of players that play this game, there will be people who get really unlucky. There'll probably be at least one person who gets 20 AFKs in a row on their team. But once again, this is to be expected. There's nothing abnormal about this, and the people who understand attitude and focusing on themselves will get tilted over it. They will understand that these things are things that can't be changed, and they will bounce back once the odds inevitably turn in their favour. So, what about losing? Well, demoting and losing games is a part of the climbing process. Let me repeat that again. Losing games and demoting is a part of the climbing process. It sounds ironic, doesn't it? But unlike pros, us mere mortals usually climb a 51 to 55% win rate. This means that in theory we'll have almost as many losses as we have wins in order to climb. Now, as anyone who ever did science at school would know, if we were to flip a coin 100 times, we wouldn't get a perfect heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails pattern. Instead, we would find that sometimes we would get 4 heads in a row, and then sometimes maybe even 8 tails in a row. The same logic, more or less, applies to League. There will be periods where you'll feel like you played well, and you will lose, say, 10 games in a row. Once again, the player with the right attitude will realize it's part of the process. I've lost count of the amount of times I've dropped divisions and even tiers, but I would say it's well over 100. Falling and having bad streaks is a part of the climbing process. Take note of that word, process. Process, it takes time, patience, and self-reflection. The people with the right attitude will bounce back even stronger than before and use it as sort of opportunity to prove themselves and that they are worthy of their peak rank or division. Now at this point in the video you may be screaming at your monitor, but I know player X and they flame all the time, yet they're a higher rank than you. Yes, but let me give you some food for thought. I also know a player who can be toxic at times. He's a higher division than me, and he's a friend of mine. But even if in game he flames and gets angry at his team, I always hear the same thing post-game when he forgets that anybody is there and he just says what is actually on his mind. He'll say, I messed up there, I could have played that better, I really should have just focused on myself. The same thought process is still there, but the emotions and frustrations surround it in a shroud whilst he's in the game. And at times it might be too much to publicly admit that was actually his own fault or his mistake that he lost the game, but internally that self-reflection is still there. Ah yes, you'll say, but there are other players who defend their mistakes and never realize that they were wrong. There are players like that. They play through limit testing and win games by playing extremely aggressively. However, these sorts of players are few and far between, and they will usually play on autopilot since mindless aggression is actually much easier to pull off than you might think. But I implore you to look at these people's profiles. I bet you they have been in the same division for most of their time playing the game. It's a bit like if Usain Bolt was given his talent of being in some way gifted, but then kept blaming all of his coaches for training him incorrectly, and he ended up staying at only the national level for his whole career. Would it be impressive to be a national level athlete? Of course, but the talent is ultimately being wasted. So, some closing thoughts. attitude in League is everything. There is absolutely nothing special about how I play the game. This is great news since it means that anyone with the right attitude towards the game can climb. But if you're ever looking for that one secret trick high elo players don't want you to know, well, this is it. This is the holy grail of climbing. Attitude. If you have made it this far, it means that you've watched through the whole video. Thank you very much for listening to my thoughts. This is my first proper full video, so if you have any kind of feedback or anything like that, it would be greatly appreciated. And once again, thank you for taking time for watching my video. Hope to see you soon.